Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a Swiftmaster guide. I've been asked previously on stream to do one, so I thought what better time to do it now since I've been playing him for a few weeks. I've also entered a tournament and won, so I feel like I've got a good understanding of where the character's strengths lie and where you should try to optimize him and how to use him. So for this guide, I'm going to cover 5 main topics, which will be the overview, normals, specials, combos, and then the last bit will be the strategy, and then an outro. Swiftmaster is a really strong character. Obviously, at the moment, undisputed top 1 in the game. He's got really strong normals, great specials, some of the best Oki situations, and really high damage. So those are the main strengths that people play towards with this character, as you should. One of the main drawbacks of Swiftmaster is high mana costs, and then the second thing that is quite noticeable when you get hit is he's got one of the lowest HPs in the game. So he's pretty much a glass cannon, but this glass cannon just one-shots people for the most part. So yeah, that's pretty much the overview of the character at the moment. So without further ado, let's get into topic 2, which will be the normals. So Swiftmaster has some of the best normals in the game, typically being 5A, so this button here. The reason why this button is really strong with Swiftmaster is because it's a 7-frame startup button, so it's quite fast, one of his fastest. And the range on it is basically, if you were to put it that way, a disjoint. Since the slash doesn't really happen on his hands, it's where the wind is, so it's quite far away, meaning that you can poke characters without them having to be directly next to you. So like this, as you can see, she's quite far away and you can still kind of lock her down. Now this button also chains into 5AA, which is you just press the light button again, or A. The reason why this is good is because it's a true block string and people can't necessarily get out of it. Another strong thing about this is that it's the 5AA ender is only -3 on block, so you can't really get punished for doing it. Great for stagger pressure, so if you know someone's waiting to see gaps in your pressure, you can do 5A, 5A, stuff like this, right, to catch them pressing. If you get a counter hit, you confirm into a full combo. So very strong, and it's great at locking people down and forcing them to kind of play into your game. Again, as I said, since this is 7 frames, there's a lot of things in the game that some other characters can't punish because their fastest buttons don't reach at the range that this button does. So for example, let's say Vanguard's 2A is pretty stubby and it doesn't reach far, despite it being one of his fastest buttons. However, Swiftmaster doesn't necessarily have that issue. The next button I'd like to cover is Swiftmaster's 2A. So this button here, as you can tell, it's got less range than Swiftmaster's 5A. The reason why is because this button is a frame faster. So this button is actually has a startup of 6 frames. This one's faster, but it reaches less far, and this one's a tad bit slower, not really that noticeable, but reaches further. And yeah, this button doesn't actually chain into his 5A, so you 2A into other buttons. The reason why you'd want to use this is in typical situations. Let's say you get thrown in the corner and you're trying to get out. 2A is one of the buttons that you'd probably press to kind of check your opponent and make sure that they're not trying to steal too much of their turn back, because some people get a bit greedy. So it's a great, you can call it mash, or a button to check your opponent and make sure that they're not really bullying you too much and taking liberties where they can. One of his next buttons that I like to cover is his 5B. Now 5B is pretty much one of his staples. I'm sure everyone knows what his 5B is, and it's this button here. Typically you'd see this on round starts from most Swiftmaster players. His 5B does reach really far, being one of his furthest buttons. Easy hit confirm into his combo starters, and it can also cancel into his other buttons such as his 2B, 5S, or specials. Going back to his 2A, actually, 2A will also, as I said, it doesn't go into 5A, but you can cancel it into his Bs, I believe, like that. So that's very important to note, because you don't want to be -6 and not doing anything. His next normal I like to cover is his 2B, which has a startup of 10 frames. This is a low, so the opponent actually does have to block this crouching. If they stand block this, they will get hit. See, also something to note, his 2A, even though it looks like a low, it is not. So the opponent can stand block this, even though they look very similar, his 2B and 2A. Going on to his next normals, the last ones I'd like to cover is his S buttons. So it's called Wind Blaster. Now, Wind Blaster on block is only -9, and it's typically used as your block string ender, which is like that. The pushback on this is really strong, and most characters can't really do anything about it. I don't think anyone can, depending on how you spaced it. You're -9 on block, but it's not really a big deal. This button, because of the hitbox, really good at checking people that actually try to jump at you, since it hits quite high as well. And it's great for trying to get space if you need it. Now, one of his other S buttons that he has is Wind Upper, which is actually only -2 on block. The only bad thing about this is that you are airborne, so take into consideration when you use this. But you can still act afterwards with his JA or JB. Or you can use his specials, which I'll get into later. One last thing I like to cover is his charged S. So this happens when you press the S button and you're holding it for a few seconds, and when you release, you get this attack here, which is his charged S, one of his strongest buttons, and undisputably one of the strongest buttons in the game. This is actually also +3 on block and has a startup of 29 frames. This is mainly used as your ender in combos, and also since it's +3, it's great to use in neutral to poke at people when they run at you, or as a full screen poke. It wall bounces and also gives you a hard knockdown, so very strong tool, so keep this in mind. 4S, this move pulls opponents into you. Very strong, but at the same time, keep in mind that this is a double-edged sword, because during the time that you pull them forward, if they're doing an action, so such as striker doing dive, right? If you try to hit them while you're pulling them, you can actually risk getting comboed on, which is quite scary, right? So something like that, if I was mashing, I wouldn't be able to block, and I'd probably die for it. Forward and S, or known as 6S, which gives you double cycling. Really strong at controlling the space and neutral. Good in block strings too, and sometimes used as a block string ender. I wouldn't recommend you using this too much, but it is very strong. For topic 3, I'd like to cover his specials. So we're gonna briefly go over his MP attacks. And for those of you that don't know what MP skills are, MP skills require you to use your mana. Now, as you see here on the screen, at the top it says 100, there's a blue bar. That is your mana. So to use your MP attacks, you have to use this bar here, which does refill, but you just want to make sure you're using your mana wisely. His first MP attack that I like to cover is his 5M. As you can see, this attack costs roughly 50 mana. This move is really good. It's a +4 on block, so opponents can't really challenge you if you start pressuring afterwards. If you've got the right spacing with this. So as you can see, in Striker's case, because her DP needs to make contact for her to continue like hitting you into the Tatsu, she has to be quite close. But if you space yourself with 5As, she can't actually DP out of that situation. So stuff like that is pretty much micro situations, but it's very important to know. This move is mainly used as your OTG, which is on the ground. So I'll show you an example. So it's kind of mainly how you get your combos going with Swiftmaster. So that's an example. As you can see, that's a lot of damage, 224, just 2 hits. So this move is really strong. It's great at anti-airing opponents that tend to fly a lot or are in the air. And since it doesn't cost too much mana, you can pretty much kind of wing it whenever you want in neutral. And also being plus, as I said earlier, very, very strong. So keep that in mind. Going on to my next point with Swiftmaster is his second MP skill, which is 2M or 623M, which is called Eye of the Storm. It's basically his DP, this attack here. This attack here. Everyone out. So as Swiftmaster says, he wants you out. So if someone's pressuring him, so you're blocking, everyone out. There you go. So that's your DP. Really, really strong tool. Pushes people out. Something to note about this, it is, I believe, frame 1 invul. But again, it is a strong tool. But again, if someone blocks a DP, like in any game, apart from Striker, if they block your DP, you are punishable. And also note that because you're quite a low HP character, a block DP can technically mean that you can lose. You've only got a health of 850, so you want to kind of be very careful when you're DPing. In any case, guard cancelling might be a better option, since it's not as risky for the most part, and its guard cancels can be quite tricky to bait for some characters, usually when they have conversion, or in some other characters' cases they can DP the guard cancel, which isn't too bad since they don't get a full combo. So keep that in mind. One of the next moves I like to cover is Swiftmaster's Wind Orb, which is one of his main specials, a pain in the ass for a lot of characters to deal with, and it costs a total MP of 50, which is his 6M. This move pulls opponents into the orb, and at any point during the orb's activation, if you press 6M again, so you reactivate the special, it will detonate and it will give you a pretty strong chance of, you know, getting your pressure going, as it basically keeps them in block stun for a long period of time. This is also one of your main combo tools, so keep that in mind. And also, if opponents are jumping in the air as well, it will also pull them in regardless of where they are. So again, this is good against characters like Kunoichi and also Dragonite that tend to like fly or store their air approaches, making it hard for you to deal with. Something that's really good about this is if the opponent's grounded, they can block. But since there's no air block in this game, catching opponents that tend to jump back a lot in pressure is very, very strong, since they can't jump this at all. The moment they leave the floor and they get put into it, they get pretty much comboed straight away. So it's a free combo tool for you. Something else to note about Wind Orb is that you can actually also use it in the air, which can change how high they jump, making it very, very tricky for the opponent to deal with. And yes, you still can combo into it afterwards. Okay, so the final thing I'd like to cover from his specials is Swiftmaster's attack called Wind Twist. What this does is it puts 4 tornadoes around the character at a set time. And what this does is it's also plus on block, but it basically prevents the opponent from hitting you directly as long as you're blocking. For some characters, it actually enables him to block out specials that would usually hit him or you'd have to worry about. And you can also just run into characters and they have to somewhat respect you to a degree. This move also has a startup of 14 frames and it has a pretty high MP cost of 70. So if I have this on and I'll make the opponent walk forward and hit me like I did last time, I'll block. See how the opponent can't necessarily get in because of the Wind Orb. Very, very strong tool. Okay, so here we have everyone's favorite character, Crusader. One of his more notable moves, which is the wall that he can put on the screen at any time. Very tricky to deal with because if he lands it, obviously he gets a combo, right? So we're quite scared of this move because it can come at any time. So something to note is that if you've got the Wind Twist on, which is 4M, and they do this, I'm not going to block. Notice how we don't get hit. See? I'm not blocking at all. This is me blocking. I'm not blocking. No block needed. So the reason why this is so strong is it allows you to essentially walk up to Crusader, which he doesn't necessarily want you to do for the most part. And it blocks out a strong part of Crusader's game plan. Now, something to note about Wind Twist is obviously it does protect you from the it does protect you from the wall that Crusader puts up, but it costs 2 tornadoes for 1 wall that Crusader uses. So if you pay attention, Wind Twist gives me 4 tornadoes. He does 1 wall. Can you see how 2 of them kind of light up there? And now we'll go back into the game. Now I've only got 2 more tornadoes, right? So when he does the second one, all 4 of the tornadoes are gone. All of the tornadoes are gone, and it's back to normal. Now, obviously on Crusader's part, this is he's wasting more mana trying to get rid of it than we are keeping it. So very, very important to take note of when using Wind Twist. Now, one final thing I like to cover, just like Swiftmaster's Wind Orb, how you can use it again to detonate and pressure your opponent. You can also use the Wind Twist, which is the 4 tornadoes, and then activate it again for another way to pressure your opponent, and typically used as a combo ender. Now, the strong thing about this as well is that this is also plus on block, meaning after your opponent's blocked it, you can pressure them afterwards if you want to. Okay, so with the Vortex Hurricane, which is the activation of the 4 tornadoes, this is quite strong against characters, as I mentioned, such as Kunoichi and Dragonite, because typically these characters have a strong air game and they like to fly about. So since it might be a bit tricky to catch them, for the most part, there's 2 ways that you can, well, 3 ways, but the main 2 ways you can try and catch them is by using some of your specials. So we'll make Dragonite fly. So in neutral, it might be a bit tricky to kind of, hit her. So you can use your normals, your air normals, if you got a read that she's gonna fly towards you and try and combo from it. Or you can use your specials, use a better example, here we go. So when she flies, you can hit her like that. Now, something to note is that the Wind Orb will always pull them in, quite important to remember. So if they're flying, you can basically turn that into your advantage. Another way with the Wind Twist, which is the 4 tornadoes, is that if they fly, your activation will beat them out, which is very, very strong. Okay, so we've covered the main specials for Swiftmaster. The only other thing that I'd like to cover for Swiftmaster in terms of his specials is the application of his Wind Orb. So when you've applied your Wind Orb in pressure and the opponent's blocking, when you're airborne into the Wind Orb, using the guard button and any direction, so I'll turn on my input so you guys can see. So holding the guard button, and as you can see, up, down, left, right, etc. These are the buttons that you want to be using when using the Wind Orb. So when they've blocked, you see how he has different movement now. So you have a number of ways to make use of this and essentially confuse your opponent. You can do pretty cool things such as this, which is kind of hard to react to, hard to block out. He's also got this, which is this. If you do it pretty fast, you basically become safe to guard cancels and DPs, preventing the opponent from doing a wake up option, which you can punish them for doing, which is very, very strong. So keep that in mind when using Swiftmaster's Wind Orb. Okay, going on to topic 4. The last thing I'd like to talk about before we just go over strategy is Swiftmaster's combos. So some really, really basic combos that I do with the character. They're not necessarily that optimal just yet. I've mainly been doing the combos that I feel comfortable doing. I know there's super, super optimal ones, but they're quite difficult to do. And I wouldn't recommend a beginner to do them just yet. I would recommend you try to do these ones that I'm about to show you. which will be quite simple. And then when the time comes down the line, you can try and branch off and try and experiment yourself and see where you can take the character. That's pretty much your BMB for a 5A starter. Then you go into the specials. So the Wind Orb pulls the opponent back in, allowing you to continue the combo. Otherwise, it would pretty much just end there, and there's not really a lot of damage going into that. Detonate. And that's pretty much the end of the combo there. So I'll break down the last bit there just so it's not too complicated. I know it seems like a lot. After you press Wind Orb in the air, as I mentioned, it is also able to use in the air. You want to drop down, press 5S, jump cancel again into 5S, and then activate. So yeah, you go one more, boom, boom. And while they're in the tornado, they're getting hit. As I said, you can continue pressuring or hit the opponent. So you want to use this time to press an additional 5S. And once you've pressed that, you see how I'm moving about and the game says I'm still pressing S. This is because I'm holding the button. You want to hold the button during that time. So while they're being hit with this, you want to press 5S, hold it, so that when you release it, you get charged S. This is how you end the combo and get your hard knockdown. So the full combo, once again, looks like this. Now, as the ender, I did run up 2B, then release the 5S. So it was like this, like that. So that's pretty much your bread and butter. It's very, very simple. To take it a step further, this is for like the more intermediate to advanced. You can actually put down another orb and continue the combo. Now, you can technically get about 3 or 4 of those, but to keep it simple, you should I roughly do about 2, just so I don't accidentally drop it. But yeah, that's pretty much the BMB there. There you go. And then you take your Oki at this point, right? Roughly around 300 damage, very, very strong. A simpler version of this would be to do this. There you go. So that's much more simpler. As you saw, it's a bit more damage. But a really, really easy and simple way of doing that for the more, beginner players, since you don't have to rely on charging too much. For the orb ender that I showed, the trick behind it is that after you've done 2S into the released charge S, as soon as you've released, you want to use the Wind Orb on the cancellation, since this move is special cancelable, and then start charging again immediately. During the time that it's charging, press 2B into it again, and then just rinse and repeat until the combo is done. And that's pretty much it. Now, from this one, you can pretty much do the same ender for all of his combos. If you want to extend it, you can do the same thing, which is 5 MP into the charged S. This button hits full screen, and you can actually get a combo from that, depending if you have mana or not. So what you do is get your charged S ready, then you release it into Wind Orb. The Wind Orb pulls the opponent back in, and as you can see, they're bouncing, meaning that you can combo from it. Very simple. Wind Orb, 5 MP. Once this has happened, your combo route structure actually changes a tiny bit. So you don't necessarily get to do all of this like I showed you earlier with the 5B star. You don't get all of these, but you get some of it. So you have to alter it just slightly. So as you saw there, you do 1 rep of up, down, there you go. So jump up and then go down. And then once you've done that, you go into 5S straight away. So I'll show you again. And the ender is quite the same. Pretty much the same as usual. You can continue it the same way with the others with 5 MP once they hit the floor, or use the Wind Orb into another pickup, giving you roughly around 600 damage or something, which is quite high, and roughly why it's one of his best combo starters and easily one of the best enders in the game if you're trying to close out a round. See how when this combo would end, right? If you was just to do the basic ender that I said, which is this into that, you'd probably have to run after the opponent or try and run underneath. I'll do something very simple. Yeah, you probably try and run underneath, which is something that I've still been doing. Let me just try it one more time. Yeah, like you'd probably try and run underneath and then try and end like that. Oops, sorry. Here's an example. Like that. So what you basically do here is you do 5S, you jump cancel into another JS, but you want to try and get as close to the orb as you can so that your guard movement is usable, as I mentioned. And then you want to do down back or down forward, depending which way you're facing, allowing you to swap sides for free and then end the combo as usual. And just like that, pretty simple. You get the corner and you can continue pressuring the opponent, which is quite strong. Quite easily. You have to have like specific routes. Mainly one of the easiest way to do it is 2B into super like that. Quite simple, easy way of doing it. Obviously the super always does, I believe, a flat damage of 200. I think that's across the board for every super. But yeah, I'll show you some easy combo routes into super. So that's one way, very easy. Now, you can obviously squeeze more damage into that. I just kept it as simple as possible. But as you know, there's characters in the game that have 850 HP, so that's pretty much a TOD in some sense if you want to get more damage into it. So that's pretty much it for the combos on Swiftmaster. The last thing I'd like to talk about, which is topic 5, is strategy. Okay, so when playing Swiftmaster, as you know, something that's quite strong with the character is normals and specials, right? So you want to take advantage of that as much as possible. Characters that you know, can also somewhat rival you on the floor. You want to make sure that you're playing towards your strengths and not theirs. So, for example, Troubleshooter likes to throw grenades. So one way of checking the character is using your charged S at ranges where you think he might be trying to like jump into you with a grenade. It's really good at catching some of his movements, and that's across the board. This button here, charge S. Let me charge it for a second. Very strong, as you can see. You might as well just use it whenever you can because there's no real risk to it. The recovery is not too bad. When people jump, the majority of the time you can block afterwards. It's plus and block and also special cancelable, so you can kind of Hail Mary it and just, oh, they got hit, special, let's party, we're in there. Like that, right? Really, really strong. Also, pokes. So you want to poke a lot with your A buttons. Very strong, keeping the opponent guessing. Ending in 5S is also quite good. Gives you space, pushes them back into the corner. So you don't necessarily have to do damage to be winning. You can take control of the screen. Make them guess what you're doing next here. They typically look for those enders where you're going to special cancel, and you can take advantage of this by doing and kind of like running back in and just footsying with the opponent. 2B is also very strong since it's a very long normal and it's also a low, so you can catch people off guard, and it's also combos. So make use of all of these normals when you can. Once you've got a hard knockdown, I would recommend you learning some of his safe jumps and also safe Oki setups. So an example of this would be put the opponent into the corner. So you can jump after this into JB and then start using the guard cancel down. So what it would look like is this. And if the opponent gets hit, you get a combo. And as mentioned earlier, it's guard cancel safe and DP safe, so you don't have to worry about too much here. Something else I'd like to cover is using his wind orb in neutral. You can actually just scare the opponent a lot. So even just throwing it out, you'll notice people will start to block immediately because they don't want to get hit by the activation, or you get the really brave people that run at you. So for those, you can just check them with buttons. You can zone them out because they can't really get in. Or if you know that your opponent's kind of clamming up a bit, run in, throw, continue your game plan, keep bullying them. Very, very strong. Typically in block strings as well, you want to make use of the 4 tornadoes. This is very, very strong. And have this on. Your opponent typically won't try and hit you. And you can kind of abuse the fact that these take hits for you by, you know, dashing into your opponent, crossing them up, etc. The only thing to note is that when you have the wind orbs up, you can still be hit. So you can get hit by low attacks or, you know, overheads that blind spot the angles the 4 tornadoes hit you at. So make sure to remember that. Okay, let me just check the rolls reversal. There we go. Okay, so here's a typical ender that you see most Swifts do. And see, it says counter. That's not because I'm pressing buttons. I will hold the guard button after. Let me just use the... There we go. Yeah, so this actually makes you pretty minus here. I'm holding the guard button, still getting comboed, right? So there's ways of setting it up so that the opponent can't necessarily roll through it, but some characters can also teleport or jump. So keep that in mind, which is why you want to vary your pressure a lot. That's one thing I'd say. Don't just rinse and repeat the same thing because you will just get blown up quite easily. So yeah, that about covers it for the Swiftmaster guide. I wanted to keep it very, very basic and just like top level. Yeah, top level. That's easy way to say it. Not top level in the sense of this is the highest level Swiftmaster, but just easy enough that it's digestible and really simple for people to get an understanding of how to play the character, what you should be looking for. I may make more videos down the line covering stuff on Swiftmaster and other characters I'm interested in, such as Vanguard and, you know, Troubleshooter, etc. And I'm waiting for more characters to come out. But let me know what you guys thought of today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to post your comment down below, leave a thumbs up and a like. Also, don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Twitch. Really helps support me. I really appreciate all of you guys. It's been an amazing road. It's been a while since I've done a guide video, but yeah, let me know what you thought. Peace.